we're about to speak with Bob Dandridge, who is a Milwaukee Bucks legend. For some reason, and we don't know why, we're going to try to get to the bottom of it ourselves. He's not yet in the Hall of Fame, which we think is a bit of a travesty. He definitely should be there. He's one of the top Milwaukee Bucks players of all time, champion in 1971, but we will bring him on and let him tell that story himself right along with us. So for the first time in the War Room, we'd like to welcome Bob Dandridge. How are you?
I am doing great. How are you guys doing?
Man,
Pretty
the
good.
Greyhound, the legend, the Greyhound. We are excellent, brother.
Man,
Right,
seem like y'all are having a lot of fun with this sports show.
Absolutely,
Man,
we
that's
do
why
have
we do
fun.
it,
That's what we
Mr.
try to do.
Dandridge. That's why we do it.
Yeah, we got to
you.
keep it light. Times, the NBA finals are going on, and they're not as epic as everyone thought they were going to be. So I don't know. It gets difficult sometimes.
Yeah, I think nobody really was expecting this type of outcome.
Right.
Everybody had planned out the next week what they were going to do, who they're going to watch Game 6 with. That looked like the possibility that might not happen.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, they might be getting them brooms. Might be getting them brooms out. It's looking.
All right. Well, again, we want to thank you for coming on the air with us for a little while to talk about some of these basketball topics. First thing we want to do, we want to congratulate you. I know this happened, about 2 years ago, but it's fairly recent. And it's the first time we're talking to you, so we want to congratulate you on your jersey retirement in Milwaukee. How did that feel to see your jersey go up into the rafters after all of these years?
I mean, I was pretty cool with it until you actually see them raising your jerseys up with a couple of your former teammates. That's when I really felt the emotion, and I think I've known Oscar Robertson for 30 plus years, but when he called me his friend, that's what really broke me up.
Right.
And then everybody in the arena had these flashing lights, and they gave everybody a lapel pin with the number 10 on it, and it was. I know the big part of it was that my wife, kids, grandson, and my closest relatives were able to come and be a part of it. And sometimes when we as athletes get awards, our kids are too young to really understand, but
right.
The blessing behind this whole thing was that, most of my kids, are adults, so everybody understood the full magnitude of the honor, and that's where I'm forever grateful.
Yeah, that has to be an amazing feeling. And Mr. Dandridge, I'm a fan of yours, although you played before my time, just because I love the history of the game more so than anything else. And
okay.
one of the questions I have for you is, all of us grew up in the inner city, so we've all heard the Pee Wee Kirkland stories, and we know how everything ended up. But we know that you also played with him at Norfolk State. So, and the question is, how good was he in basketball, and could he have been a pro? Or,
no, the real question, Mr. Dandridge, was what were those practice battles like? That's what we really want.
I mean, fortunately, we played opposite positions, so I didn't have to worry about guarding him. But the first part is that he definitely could have played in the NBA with skills that he had. Most impressive about him was that he was, without a doubt, the best conditioned athlete on our team, irregardless of what his street reputation was. But really, he probably would have been the sixth man that year if the starting point guard had not broken his arm. There was a guy that was playing in front of him at the point guard position, and that guy broke his arm about 3 weeks before the start of the season. And he and Pee Wee had been battling all year, but because of the coach's philosophy of playing seniors, Pee Wee might have been the sixth man that year if it wasn't for the guy breaking his arm.
Wow, that's interesting. Never heard that story.
Didn't know that.
Everybody saw the scenes in amazement, but because of Pee Wee being in the starting lineup, we averaged about 110 points a game at Norfolk State for about the first part of the season. At least 3/4 of the season, we averaged 110 points a game. We were featured in Sports Illustrated that year. And Pee Wee Kirkland directed the offense. He was great on the fast break, giving the ball up to the guy in front. And my best Pee Wee Kirkland story is Norfolk State played North Carolina A&T in a triple overtime in the CIAA tournament. Most of the starters had fouled out at least by the second overtime, and I fouled out in the second overtime going to the bench, and my thoughts were, if we win this game, I'm going to be the MVP of the tournament. Well, in a 5-minute overtime, Pee Wee must have scored about 14 or 15 points, so he snatched the MVP award away from me in a matter of 5 minutes.
Wow.
He was just a great basketball player, but also, he was a great person. He was well respected. You hear the street stories, but to ascend past those, he was just a great person. I think one of his best statements was that he spoke at my college coach's funeral, and interesting enough, he was speaking and he said the one thing that he had gotten from Norfolk State and the staff there was a belief in God.
Wow.
And that was like a real mind-blowing thing. Irregardless of what his reputation was in New York with basketball and whatever his choice of activities were there, he has been or made a tremendous impact on the community of Harlem now during these last 20 years. I think he even has a PhD now in education. So,
yeah, he does, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. So these are the real stories about Pee Wee Kirkland that I've had. I was fortunate to be a part of his life, and to me, he's just a great guy.
All right. So, we know that you were drafted in the fourth round in the 1969 draft. Same as same draft as your teammate, then Lou Alcindor. And a year later, I guess you guys weren't playing any games because just 1 year into your young careers, 1971, you guys won the championship. How was that season? First of all, how was it playing with two legends in Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Oscar Robertson, but how was that whole season leading up to the championship against the Bullets?
It was a fun season. It was a very challenging season for me, and it was challenging even my rookie year coming from Norfolk State, being a fourth-round draft choice, and having to prove that I belonged there. Playing with the Big O and Kareem was a lot of fun because I knew I didn't have to take the pressure shot in close games, but it also allowed me the freedom to play my game, to run the fast break, to play good defense. But playing with these two guys, I had a rare opportunity to see how superstars or how guys could control a game. You know, Kareem and the Big O sort of alternated on who would carry the team going down the stretch the last 3 or 4 minutes if we were behind or if the game was close. So I really contributed my playing with them as allowing me time for my game to sort of fall in place. But from playing at Norfolk State, like I said, we averaged 110 points my senior year, so the pro game, I had almost been primed for that because it was a running game. It was a man-to-man defensive scheme in the NBA. We were fortunate to have a guy like Larry Costello who I think practiced us on days when other teams were resting. He practiced us. And ironically, about a month ago, Kareem and I were together, and I guess through maturity, we realized a guy that we thought was not a great coach, we were able to admit 40 years later that he was good for us at that particular time, as we all do. You know, at young ages, we think this is the worst person in the world, but as we mature,
it takes time.
So,
maturity.
It
takes time.
Milwaukee was just a great spot. You know, we had Lucius Allen, we had John McLaughlin, the Big O. We didn't have that great foursome that seems to be applicable to teams that are winning now. Back during that day, you could have 3 stars, 2 role players, and pretty much be a championship contender.
Right.
So playing with the Big O and Kareem sort of gave me the foundation so that when I went to Washington, I could do my thing in Washington and be the lead guy with Fulham.
Right, because you also won a championship with them in '78, right?
Yep, 78.
Right. Okay.
78. We
now back to the first one though in '71, because you know, like Jimmy told you, we like to do our history on things, and Oscar Robertson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar are the names that just the casual fans are going to know. But, some facts about that, and I know you already know this because you lived it, but in that playoff run, you were actually the second leading scorer, averaging about 19 points and almost 10 rebounds a game, with Oscar averaging about 18 and 9 assists. But I don't think anybody out there would know that. I mean, I know in the larger scheme of things, it was because Oscar was later in his career and Kareem was there, and it was supposed to be their team. But when we talk about stars versus role players, like I think looking at how everything went down, we would have to classify you as the third star on that team.
The star, absolutely.
Yeah,
19
19.2 in the playoff run is nothing to sneeze at.
Without a doubt. I mean, I knew within myself that the Bucks weren't going to go, but so far, because I had games in the playoffs that I may have been the leading scorer. You know, that
Right.
might have been every sixth game or something like that. But I was sort of, you know, a little bit modest, and back in the day, it wasn't chic to boast about yourself.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
I mean, you were somewhat humble. You took the accolades that came at you, but that was the thing that made me a consistent player and wanting to do well, because I've always and I thought about how to be a star when you were originally designated as the third option.
Mm-hmm.
Because in Milwaukee, everybody talked about Kareem, the Big O. Surely they were the stars. But when you look at the final statistics, you know, I'm ending up second in rebounding, second in scoring, probably playoff average goes up as versus the regular season. So, you know, you could not during that time, and I still don't shoot my own home.
But you know what's interesting though? A couple things. If you score 19 points a game in 2017, they're gonna give you $100 million contract. Also, what's interesting
Jimmy,
is
if you just get like 6 rebounds a game, they're gonna give you $100 million contract.
19 and 6 is $100 million.
Yeah, but you know what's interesting is like and I've read Oscar's book, and in his book, I mean he had all kinds of great things to say about you. One of the things he said kind of was like that team went as you went. When you were on, you guys were almost unbeatable.
Yeah. I mean,
and
then defensively, you know, I always, and I tease Oscar sometimes if somebody was, if one of the guards were having trouble defensively, or the Big O went out to take a rest, then I'd have to go from the small forward to a guard position to pick up Frazier, Jerry West, JoJo White. So I guarded defensively a multiple of excellent offensive players, but it was always a challenge. And finally, you know, somebody started to give me credit for the work that I did.
You know,
well, I think fans who are like basketball
Mr.
heads,
Dandridge.
I think they know, because I actually mentioned to my father-in-law yesterday that we were going to have you on today, and he was excited. You know, he started calling me by your nickname. He told me about the kind of defense you played and all of that. So
yeah, same here.
The fans,
when I talked to my uncles,
they
all knew who you were. Everybody knew who. I mean, you know, so the generation before us, they have a lot of respect for you. And it's amazing when you hear some of the guys you played with and against. You just mentioned, like, you know, Jerry West in passing, and you know all these guys that you played with, Wes Unseld, and these guys in our eyes are legends. But I have a question for you, because you played with a lot of great players. But when you were coming up as a youngster playing basketball, who was your idol? Who did you look to and say, I want to be like him? You know, as you were coming up playing basketball.
You know, there were two guys. There was a guy named Bob Pettit that played for the St. Louis Hawks, and he was about 6'7" or 6'8", and shot a soft jump shot from the corner. And when I was on the playground, shooting from the corners were always my favorite spot. So it was a guy like Bob Pettit, and then the other guy that I really idolized was Satch Sanders. With the Celtics, because he did a lot of the dirty work. He played defense. He was long, and I was long and skinny growing up. And then there was a guy that played out in Utah. He didn't play long, a guy named Billy the Hill McGill. And he averaged about 33 points a game out at the University of Utah. And this was back during the mid-'60s. And he shot a jump hook. And so I learned so maybe, those were the guys I grew up on. Hal Greer.
You know Hal Greer. We're from Philadelphia.
We're very familiar with Hal Greer's work.
Yeah. In fact, my senior year at Maggie Walker High School, I was sort of mischievous in class, and I had an English teacher the first day of school that said, well, Bob, if you behave yourself for 3 days, I got a surprise for you. So I said, okay, I won't disrupt the class for 3 days there. And that evening, she told me, she said, well, bring your tennis shoes to school tomorrow and some shorts. And ironically, who walked in the classroom that day but Hal Greer?
Wow.
And nobody else in the classroom knew him but me, and I had a chance to work out with him that day because he worked out in my high school gym. And he said, well, I'm going to take 100 shots, and I want you to pass the ball back to me. And that day sort of set the tone for where I learned if you ever want to play professional basketball, you got to be able to shoot somewhere near this guy. And that particular day, he made 98 out of 100 jump shots. And
wow.
I mean, that just blew me away, and that sort of set the standard or elevated my thoughts on what I needed to do, how I needed to work hard if I ever wanted to go to the NBA. And a lot of credit I give to that one day of playing with Hal Greer.
Wow. Only people that my teachers ever brought to the class for me was the principal.
You know, one thing, growing up in Philadelphia, we're very familiar with like Hal Greer, but it's almost like gospel in Philadelphia that, you know, Wilt Chamberlain is just that guy. Like when you grow up in Philadelphia, it's like you're taught that as a young age.
That's because Wilt has an apostle that
it's like you're taught at a young age in Philadelphia schools that Wilt Chamberlain is, you know, the god of basketball, and you watched him play. Just how good was Wilt?
I mean, Wilt was just unbelievable as far as his strength. And a couple of games, the Lakers versus the Bucks, I don't think I intentionally, but I got into foul trouble, and on those occasions I got a chance to see Wilt go against Kareem, the Big O go against Jerry West, and my thoughts were, you got the greatest seats in the world to see these four guys, you know, go at each other. And usually Kareem would have a great first half, but then somebody must have said something to Wilt, and Wilt would come out the second half and just about dominate Kareem. Because at 6'2", at 7'2", he was about a solid 260, no fat on him. I mean, just a massive human being. And, you know, sometimes they be talking about LeBron and Magic and now KD and Larry Bird. And when you look back in history, you know, the guy had a season where, he had a season where he averaged 42 points and 29 rebounds against Bill Russell alone. And if you look back, and then there was one year where Wilt averaged like 49.5 minutes a game. And those included some overtime games. Because remember, Wilt never fouled out of a game.
Damn. That's amazing.
So, Mr. Dandridge,
so when you look back,
he sounds unreal. Like Wilt doesn't even sound like he exists, and it's not you we've heard these stories all our lives from a myriad of different directions. It's like, and everybody consistently says the same. These are men who played in the NBA, greats such as yourself. When they talk about Wilt, they turn into fans. Like, we've seen the greatest, and this it was nothing for him to get 50 and 30 and beat up on Bill Russell, who was a great in and of himself, and Kareem, he beat up on Kareem. It was nothing for Wilt.
But then Wilt may have, but Kareem would still walk away with his 35 points off of that sky hook, and Wilt would be frustrated at some point. And when we talk about great players, I mean generational. I sometimes I get sort of disappointed when they have to pull hen's teeth to admit the greatness of Kareem.
Oh, absolutely. Listen,
Kareem is top 10.
You can't tell me anything bad about Kareem. Like, I grew up in a house with my father. Like, Kareem was his favorite player. So you can't tell me anything bad about Kareem. And you actually played with Kareem when he was a young player. I know all of us watched him towards the end of his career when he still was putting up 20 a game, but he was almost 40 years old.
Yeah, he put up 20 and 40 with them goggles.
People forget how good he was as a younger player. How good was he coming in the league?
Oh, I mean, Kareem came in the league, and I mean, I've seen guys. I mean, and the guys that Kareem played against. I mean, he played against Wilt. He played against Walt Bellamy. He played against Nate Thurman, Willis Reed. I'm talking about he played against some guys. I'm talking about all these guys that he played against were in the top 50 guys that have ever played the game. And I mean, he played every night, and I saw him some nights where opponents wouldn't want to come out there and face him the second half because he done shot the sky hook all night on.
Mr. Dandridge, in meeting you has been a privilege and a pleasure, and I have to say that your humility is what stands out the most. And at this point, players that we have to talk about who we feel is a Hall of Famer, and that's you. So, throughout your career, 2-time NBA champion, 4-time NBA All-Star, all NBA second team, all defensive first team, all rookie first team, and retired jersey, 18 points a game, 7 rebounds, and 3.4 assists. The elephant in the room, why is Bob Dandridge not in the Hall of Fame?
And that's a tough one for me.
I will gladly kick Joe Dumars out for you if you need me to go do that. I don't got a problem. I don't got a problem. It's a couple guys that gotta go. They in there. They don't deserve to be in there over Mr. Dandridge, man.
And the league is and has always been full of talent. And the guys that are in there, everybody has put in a certain body of work, but, they haven't contributed any more than what I have to the game itself. And,
amen.
Sometimes that you haven't maybe I haven't done the politicking that it takes. So,
some of those guys are in there because they smiled. They smiled and they brushed their teeth and made sure they smiled quite a bit.
And I guess for some reason I haven't done the politicking that sometimes is required because I think that, the stuff I did should stand on its merit.
Right.
And I not be punished because I played with Kareem and the O and Elvin and West. I basically carried the team in Washington when we won the championship. And everywhere I've played the game. I've achieved, and I've always been on a winning squad. So maybe at some point, the acknowledgement will come. It took a while with the retirement of the jersey. I've been blessed to still be affiliated with the NBA in terms of still being able to do some work in the league. And I just believe that, things, this being in the Hall of Fame will come. I hope it comes while I'm still living, so just my family. I want to enjoy it, too, along with my family. But I'm hopeful that somebody will realize, hey, wait a minute, how we leave Dandridge out of this thing?
Yeah.
Right, and we live in a time now where everybody gets crowned prematurely. Like, I, as recently as today, heard people referring to the Golden State Warriors as having 4 Hall of Famers. And I'm baffled when I hear stuff like that. And then we have NBA greats who've already played out their career, and retired, and they're still waiting on their call to the Hall. Meanwhile, fans are calling people Hall of Famers who've been in the league for about. People are calling Draymond and Clay and Steph and KD Hall of Famers already. They didn't play out their career yet. But what I want to talk about real quick is the difference in era. We get into these arguments all the time about what era is the best or which player is the best, and it's often difficult to compare players over different eras because of rules differences. The players might be a little bit bigger and faster these days, but it seems like when we have these kind of conversations, whatever era you grew up watching seems to be the one that most people are, they kind of favor. But watching the game today and knowing how it was back when you played, like, what are some of the noticeable differences in the NBA, from then till now?
I mean, the 3-pointer is just a small thing because we had a lot of mid-range shooters, but if they had been trained in today's era, they would also be 3-point shooters.
Right. So the record books would be different probably if there was a line.
Yeah, the record books would be different because you could take a guy like John McLaughlin, JoJo White, Phil Chenier, where they were good long ball shooters. If they were coming up in today's world through AAU and all that, instead of being long ball shooters or mid-range shooters because of the era we're in, they'd have been good 3-point shooters.
Right. Yeah, we know Phil Chenier definitely would have been.
Phil Chenier, you had a couple of good shooters up in Philly. Who was it? Andrew Toney.
Oh, yeah. The Boston Strangler.
We the Boston name referred to him the Boston Strangler.
But I just think the difference, I think the guys that were all-stars back during the 70s or 60s, they would also be all-stars and MVPs in the current league. I just think it's a matter of everybody coming along at a certain time. Surely the game has changed. I said that Derek Lewinsky sort of messed up the game for big men in this country, because once he came into the league, now you got guys that are 6'10", 7-footers. Now they don't want to play inside no more. They want to be
right.
three-point shooters. So,
Mr. Dandridge, you know the most
Go
amazing
ahead.
thing. The most amazing thing about this conversation is your humility. Because we've watched your highlights, we've looked at your stats, and I tell you what, if I put up numbers like you did, I don't know if it's possible for me to be as humble as you are, but that's an honorable thing.
Mr. Dandridge, I brag about my 3-on-3 career and playground. I know I couldn't. If I had a team game in the NBA, I would have people carrying me around on a magic carpet.
It's amazing. Like, you might be the most humble professional player we've ever talked to. I mean, I've seen your highlight, the game winner against the Spurs. If I did that, I'd be bragging about that to this day. But, I just want to say it's very honorable how humble you are. But do you think that has possibly hurt you in terms of getting into the Hall, your humility?
Probably so. But my life has been so blessed.
Right.
Having come from Richmond, gone to Norfolk State, 4th round draft choice, played on a championship team, 3 great kids, a loving wife. I'm in reasonably good health. I'm still doing some work in the NBA. I'm playing golf 2-3 days a week. I mean, you got guys that have had all these accolades who are in bad health these days, struggling otherwise. But, hey, I mean, I've just been blessed. I get up every day, I get up every day with a smile. I got stuff to do. So, the Hall of Fame is something that I know that I deserve. If there's anybody out there who's holding me back, who's saying, well, Dandridge did this and Dandridge did that, because when I played in the league and when I came along at a certain point in the league, it was that black power thing.
Right.
So, I was like, not a corporation guy. I went to work.
Man.
I did my job. I played hard. If I was injured, I was injured. I may sit out a game or two. But, if there's somebody out there who thinks that, Dandridge, and during that era, as a African American guy, it was frowned upon if you spoke what you thought.
Right.
So there's some stuff.
Salute to Craig Hodges and Mahmoud Abdul Rauf. Those guys.
Well, I don't know if I was, but it's this is America. What's the movie Coming to America? So, but all in all, I don't have any regrets. And the young guys that are playing now, for years I didn't watch the game, but then about 6 years ago, I'm sitting in the Verizon Center, and I'm saying, these guys can play. This is exciting. I began to appreciate the three-pointer, and with the three-pointer, I know that a team can be up by 10, or like the game last night with Cleveland, the three-pointers that Durant hit, that was it.
Yeah, it's become a big part of the game.
Yeah.
And it's exciting. It has really added some excitement. And then I see the athleticism of the young guys. I see a guy 6'10", walking around here with a 36-inch waist. And I'm saying, this guy, I mean, and he's running the floor.
No, and that's what we wanted to ask you about, though, because the way we feel about it, like our era, we're basically, we were teenagers through the Jordan era. So, we started watching basketball maybe in the early to mid 80s. But it seems to me, at least, and this is Devin, it seems like the bigger, it's faster, and the more athletic the players get, the softer the NBA game becomes. Like, these guys they're a different beast when you look at, their size and how fast they can run, how high they can jump. But it seems like the rules just keep catering to a softer game. So you named a few people that you think would be all-stars in today's game. Do you see any guys today that you think could thrive back when you played the game?
Well, I think, whoever the starting, the all-star team, just about all those guys could have played back in their era. I mean, John Wall would probably be the same as Nate Archibald. I mean, people have forgotten Nate Archibald, but Nate Archibald had that type of speed. JoJo White and the Thompson guy out of Golden State.
Clay.
The
Clay.
Iceman and Durant.
He gets that comparison a lot. Yeah.
So, I mean, everybody, the only way they couldn't compete, the younger teams against back in the day, would be at the center position.
Right.
I mean, because it was a physical game, and when you say somebody's playing the power forward, you had guys like Maurice Lucas, the Big E. They were in there pounding every night.
Right. Now the power forwards and centers are behind they're on the perimeter shooting three-pointers.
Yeah, they shooting threes. I see, pre-game warm-ups when I go to the game. They got 7-footers working on threes. But
I hate it, Mr. Dandridge. I honestly, because I feel like the pendulum has swung, and I don't mind a big man being able to step out and add that versatility.
Oh, yeah.
But I think that the development of game has come to a point where it's faulty when you can't develop your low post game and that, when you just want to stand on the wings and get out of the way, that's not good for the game.
So you're a big fan of Cousins.
Oh man, Boogie, yeah, I love.
love Boogie.
Yes, sir.
Oh, Mr. Dandridge, I have a question. I have a question I have to ask you, because you said that while you didn't watch the game, and then you fell back in love with the game again. So who now, in terms of the modern players, who would you say is your favorite guy to watch? I mean, you have a lot of great players in the league, like you said, we always do. Who's the one guy where you're like, I got to cut this game on and watch this game? Who's the one guy you like to watch?
I mean, LeBron.
Okay.
I mean,
and if you had to,
does he remind you of Big O?
Yeah, because he always gets that comparison.
Yeah, but it took me a while to recognize Kobe. I think Kobe is like a unique guy.
Okay.
In terms of with the intensity and the love of the game that Kobe has. I think that very few players, even LeBron, doesn't play with that type of passion and just gutness for the game as Kobe.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Kawhi Leonard, I enjoy watching him play because he reminds me of some of the things I used to do, play the total game for sheer entertainment. I like to see Wall and Beal on target. I mean,
okay.
I like the Greek Freak, but Chris Paul, I think, is just an exceptional, tough guy for his size. Man. I like Chris Paul. So I'm in tune with the modern day game. You know, if I'm in Milwaukee, I may go to a Milwaukee practice. When I'm in Washington, I'll go in the locker room or something like that. So as I have, matured and I've allowed myself to enjoy a game that's really been good to me. And one thing that I always remember is Isaiah Thomas said about 10 years ago, say when you bury him, he wanted to be buried with a basketball in his coffin. And I think that speaks volumes for us as NBA guys who dedicated our lives, and so much of what we do now is still focused on basketball.
Yeah, that's an amazing quote right there. That's an amazing quote.
So before we get you out of here, any predictions about the NBA Finals? We know, Golden State's up 3-0. You see anything miraculous happening, or is it pretty much a done deal?
I mean, I would love to. I don't. If it does, I just don't see Cleveland getting back in this thing because Golden State just has too many weapons. And Golden State players know the game of basketball. They're not going to make mental mistakes. I think that's what's hurting Cleveland right now, just the mental mistakes. So, hey, I mean, I've been a Cleveland fan. I've talked trash about Cleveland winning. I've had to call some of my friends up and apologize and act like I'm happy that Golden State is winning. I'm trying to call them and give them their due before they call me and tease me, but it would be the greatest feat in history if Cleveland came back from this. And I just think Golden State is too hungry, and this would be just an ultimate for KD. And I just think Game 4, he just going to have a hell of a game.
Right. See, every time we think about, letting you go, something else comes up. You spoke about KD. What are your thoughts on, guys leaving their teams and kind of joining, quote unquote, super teams or forming super teams? Is that something you guys would have done in your day? Had you had the option of that kind of free agency?
I don't think so. I don't think so because, the heat of competition was so thick that during the off season when the Players Association went on trip, a guy that has spanked your butt all year, you may talk to him, speak to him, but you're not going to have any dialogue with him.
Right. And so you're definitely not going to be talking to him about joining up in a certain city and stuff like that.
Oh, no. I mean, that wouldn't even be a thought.
Yeah.
I mean, that's and when KD made that move, I had to remember the generation that we're playing in.
Exactly.
And it was good for him. He's gotten out of it exactly what he wanted, and it's almost like even in today's world where where kids start transferring in high school, and a kid gets declassified, or
right,
so that he can move down a grade and play against younger kids so he can be the star. I mean, so today's world, that's just a part of the world we live in now.
Right. And that's, I don't particularly care for it. I guess I'm an older soul because I just don't like it. I think it's something to it. Competition, to me, is the name of the game. Now people are saying, it's business. I understand that. As a man, I want people to do what's best for them, for their personal lives, for their business. But this is still sports, and you got to have some kind of competitive nature in you to want to beat guys instead of join guys. But hey, like you said, it's the new generation.
Beat you.
We can explain it.
Just like when we have our meeting of retired players, you can remember every adverse thing that happened to you in competition with at least half the guys that are there. I remember when he just hit me with that elbow.
Uh-huh.
Or take a guy like Rick Barrett. I mean, Rick Barrett's goal was to give you 35 every night. So when we're at these gatherings, ain't a whole lot of people flocking to Rick Barrett because he gave you that 35. So, it wasn't a thing of you my man and we okay. No, I can remember I was at a function with Julius Erving, maybe about 10 years ago, and he and I were sitting down at a table across from each other, and after about 40 minutes, one of the guys said, David, you and Doc been sitting here for almost an hour, and y'all have not spoken to each other at all, and neither one of us had competed against each other in 15 years.
Hey,
wow.
You said you still got those memories, man. It's just the competitiveness, man.
I know you played on an All-Star team with Doc, so I guess you were there when Doc made his transition from the ABA to the NBA.
Yeah.
How great of a player and how big of a star was Dr. J in that time?
He was a tremendous player. He really was. He brought a flair to the league that it hadn't seen before. And as a competitor of his, I really, we competed and it was fierce competition, and Julius came into the league and set the league on fire. He became probably the top personality in the league. And that was him. And I think the thing that I found out about him after we finished competing is that when you see him and you see this nice, probably guy with class, articulate, I mean, that's the way he really is. And it's good to know that, that wasn't a porn.
Right.
And once you be around Julius for a while, you can see why the league embraced him and took advantage of his personality and sort of put him out front in the league.
Right.
All right. Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But then there was a time, I think, when Marcus Johnson and Walter Davis came into the league. I think everybody, myself, Julius, and a couple other small forwards were ready to leave because Here you had some 21-year-olds that were jumping even higher than juniors when you took a guy like Marcus Johnson, Walker Davis playing the small forward with the speed that he had. So for every generation, because I say 3 years from now, the kids won't know Michael Jordan other than by the Air Jordans that are being sold.
Uh-oh.
That's true.
I mean,
we talk about that all the time. Out of sight, out of mind.
That's just the evolution of sport.
Yep.
I mean, you can ask some kids now, who was Moses Malone?
Yeah.
And
it's there.
One of the things that keeps me alive is I went to elementary school in Southeast D.C., and they introduced me, and all the kids said, "Oh, you're on that K2 NBA."
Right.
And so, and I'm saying this is a part of having played in the league and being able now to be grateful for playing, and this is something I never realized would happen. YouTube video game, Bob Dandridge.
Right. Yeah.
So,
amen.
But no, that's definitely a great
Dandridge,
point.
we've appreciated your time, man. We gotta have you back in the war room. You are now a friend of the war room, of course.
Yeah, I love these stories, man. Like I would go out. Like I love these. I'm an NBA history nerd, so this has been an amazing pleasure for me. So I just want to say thank you.
Yes.
You've been a wealth of knowledge, and we're gonna help with that push. We're gonna get you into the Hall of Fame.
Please do.
Amen.
We're gonna help that push. So we're gonna put something together. So it's been great talking to you. We really appreciate your time because you gave us more time than we expected, and you've been a wealth of knowledge. And we've loved talking to you.
And
thank you, sir.
Guys. And look, I wish y'all the best of luck. Y'all need to be on Sports Center in that 6 o'clock spot.
We agree.
I heard that. Thank you.
Yes,
thank
sir.
you, Mr. Dandridge.
Thank you so much, and we'll be talking to you.
Take care.
Okay. Have a good evening.
All right, you too. All right, that is Milwaukee Bucks Bob Dandridge. Listen, like for guys out there and people out there who are listening who really aren't familiar with that era of basketball and you're not familiar with that name, just do some research. Like,
just go to YouTube. Like my man,
like, he was a really humble guy, but he was a pretty good player back in an era where a lot of the legends that we talk about today, this is the era that they played in. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the end of Wilt Chamberlain's career, nearing the end of Oscar Robertson's career. All the guys when, Michael and now LeBron, every time LeBron passes some records, like these are the names that come up. Like he won championships with those guys. And, I was doing a little research, fellas, because we've been calling him a Milwaukee Bucks legend. But if you go look at some of their all-time lists that, people around that franchise and that organization have made, I've found on average that he's probably ranked as like the fourth best player in Milwaukee Bucks history, only behind Kareem, Oscar, and maybe Sidney Moncrief, and then his name comes up.
Sidney was an amazing player too.
They're not the Lakers, but at the same time, you got the Ray Allens of the world, Big Dog, Glenn Robinson. Yeah, you got some good Milwaukee Bucks out there. So it was definitely a privilege and a pleasure.
I just want to first off apologize to my brothers because I was gunning during that conversation because y'all know I'm like an NBA history nerd. Like I love that stuff, and I probably would have sat and talked to him for maybe 3 or 4 hours because if you just look at some of the names that he just randomly said, like these are guys we're like what, like Rick Barry gave everybody work and talk about Dr. J. and Wilt Chamberlain and Kareem and Oscar, and he even brought up Magic. Like, he just randomly said names, and these, for guys like us who grew up as basketball is damn near religion. That conversation was amazing, and shout out to my brother Vod for hooking that up, because I could talk like that all day long.